Hey everyone, Josh Verlin here from City of Basketball Love, joined by Brian Shanahan from Episcopal Academy, Lynard Stewart from Simon Gratz High School. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. We're here to talk about the life, the legacy of former Temple coach John Chaney, who passed away at the end of January at age 89. Guys, thank you so much for coming on here to talk about such an important and monumental figure in Philadelphia basketball. I wanted to really give you guys the first word. Lynard, let's start with you. What did John Chaney mean to you?
That's a good question right there. That's a big question too. When it comes to basketball and life, he meant, almost just as much as my coach from, there's only really three coaches that I can really say that meant that much to me in my basketball life is Coach L and John Chaney. They gave me almost everything I have. I was just talking to some kids the other day and told them the impact that he had and how much I got from him. I wouldn't be here right now. My life wouldn't be what it was. I wouldn't have been able to accomplish the things I accomplished at all without him being in my life and me taking that Temple challenge. And it's more than basketball. That's one of the things that I think that was so crucial about him. It was more than basketball. He was one of the people that was able to teach the game of basketball and teach life at the same time, which is a great gimmick in the sense of, you can get it. He makes it easier. And so for me, he was so important. And even till today, as I'm a coach now, I've taken and used so many things that I've gotten from him. So in that sense, just as key as my own parents creating me, almost, I could honestly say that's as much important that he has been in my life.
I'll piggyback on what Lynard said, is there's only a few, he epitomized what you say in coach. Like Lynard and I both coach, but that word is so much more powerful when you talk about Coach Chaney. Same as Coach Stewart right now has, but that power that Coach Chaney had is the same. There's so much more meaning and so much more than neither I could be to anybody, but I hope to be part of that. And he was more of a transformational coach than a transactional coach, and really took me his last couple of years. As I came in the office, I said I wanted to be a basketball coach. That's what I want to do. I want to learn from you, and I was able to walk on there and be in all those meetings and be a part of it at an early age, and he allowed me to do that. So without him, he's so impactful in my life for things that I learned as being a mentor of young men, and forever grateful, forever.
And Brian, by the time you started at Temple in 2003, I believe, right?
Yeah, 2004, fall of 04.
So by the time you arrived at Temple, he was already in the Naismith Hall of Fame. He already been to the Elite Eights. He already, had most of the success he was going to have. What was that feeling like, deciding to go, I'm going to be part of the Temple basketball program? That the first practice, the first interaction. What was that like?
I talked to Coach Leibovitz about it, and he ripped me. The first practice I played in, I did like a walk-on tryout, and he somehow walked by. And first minutes, we're on the baseline like most practices started, and he was there and just ripped me. Why are you driving baseline? You got to go in a hole and out a hole like you're a rat. You're a rat with the ball. When you're driving baseline, you got to go in and go out and just rip me. And I was like, I guess I was just happy to be there. And then I was like, all right, let me straighten up here. I got to get my act together here. I'm getting coached like everybody else. So
yes,
that was my first couple interactions with Coach were like that. And very much, he didn't care. He coached you, and he valued the basketball. Kind of like you value people in life.
Were you intimidated when you had decided to go for Temple, knowing that if you were going to play basketball there, you were going to be playing for John Chaney? Was that an intimidating decision?
No, because I knew what I was getting into. I was aware of what I was getting into. I played at high school for Coach Doc, who was a City Big Five Hall of Famer as well as coach, and but I knew it, and I knew that I loved basketball. So if you didn't love basketball, 5:30 in the morning when you're going to practice, you're going to 4:30 in the morning. You're getting up ready to go. If you don't love basketball, you'll find out real early. And I loved it, and I loved being a part of being a Temple Owl, and guys that had that tradition. It was awesome. So yeah, I knew exactly what I was getting into, eyes wide open, except for I didn't think I was going to be coached the way I was the first practice.
And Lynard, what about you? I mean, you arrived at Temple in '94. You started Simon Gratz right there in the city. What were your early John Chaney memories, and what did it mean for you to go to Temple?
Early, well, let me just make a comment, Brian. You listen, that's one of the things that had to be shocking. Like, he's coaching everybody the same. Like, you could have been a 10-star recruit, or somebody might have been just in the gym shooting. He's going to coach you.
Yeah.
That's one thing that was funny. Though, first of all, I was intimidated a little bit, honestly, when I decided to come to Temple. And, obviously he wasn't in the Hall of Fame yet, but he was creating a Hall of Fame career. And I was always Temple. I grew up coming down to the Sunny Hill Leagues. Temple's not far from my house. I grew up in the back gyms. I would always see him and hear about Temple basketball. So my early days, my first days was a little bit intimidating. And, coming from where I came from, there was some expectations on me. I didn't know that I would come in and had an impact right away that I had. So there was some pressure he put on me that he might not have put on others, because he already knew as a coach, as we know, Brian, that this kid might be the kid that might be starting. So we're going to have to push him a little bit more. So them early days was amazing, though, because I had older guys that was there for me, and they got the brunt of everything. So you know what I mean? They got a lot of the brunt of everything. So they was great. I remember that first day clear as day in my head of practice. Because back then they started October 15th, much different now. You knew that day was coming. October 15th, 5:30 a.m. Look, you can look on your calendar down and go back. That's the first day we practiced. And I remember that first day. I don't know if you remember, Brian. He went over your roles, sat everybody down first, and then you got into the baseline stuff. So it was exciting, amazing, and like I said, you got taught if you really love basketball or not. If you can get your butt up at B. I always tell Brian, people get it wrong too, Josh, is that you say 5:30 practice, so that clicks in your head 5:30. For us, when we say 5:30, you're on the court starting the first drill. Not no 5:30, we getting up, headed down. No, 5:30, first drill, whistle going. So which means, like he said, 4:30. So it's a little, us who participated, no, it's 4:30. To you guys, it's 5. To us, and some guys needed to get up earlier than that. You had to get down there, you had to get tape, you had to get going. So it was 4:30. So you learned to love. You questioned sometimes. I know Brian was like, hold up, is this basketball? So you learned if you really loved the game of basketball, and he tested you. That was his way of really testing you, if you can respond to things that early in the morning.
Sorry, Brian.
Sorry, I would say he gave you discipline and accountability by doing that. And it was a simple thing, but for college kids, by doing practice in the morning like that, you had to, even if you had no self-discipline and no accountability before you got on campus at Temple, when you got to North Broad, you figured out, like, all right, I got to be there ready to go, and this is what it's all about. Mm-hmm. And he had that when I was there, for sure. He had all the credibility in the world. So he said it, you did it. There was no, right, there was nothing, no questioning it. You did it. You were there. Yep.
Lynard, you followed up another Simon Gratz alum, Aaron McKee, who obviously played at Temple. He left the year before you got there. Did he give you any heads up? Like, did you feel like you were at least prepared for what was coming?
No, I mean, Aaron was just so happened to be my host, when you go get recruited, which made sense, that makes a lot of sense. So he was my host. For him at that point in time, I think it was more, he was, obviously he was a leader. They was heading to the NBA. and he was just telling me, you know, more so about basketball and, you know, being disciplined, you know, leaning on each other and, you know, being able to work together with everybody. So it was more so about that. It wasn't like, yo, you're going to struggle. So it was more so, you know, we all worked, you know, came together as a group when it was time to get up and go to practice. So, you know, he just told me that, you know, look, they want you here because obviously I didn't sign there yet. So, you know, we want you, you know, you can be a part of a great program. You know, coach is a great person. You're going to learn the game. You're going to learn life. You're going to learn about discipline. You're going to learn about yourself also. And so, you know, those was the key things that he kind of taught me. And then, you know, it was kind of easy for me coming from Coach Ellaby too. Like I wasn't coming from unfamiliar territory when I came to Temple. You know what I mean? So coming from Coach L was sort of the same thing. You know, if Coach L could have had us practice at 5:30, we've been in at 5:30. The school engineer wasn't coming in that early. So it was just so familiar, you know, coming from Gratz and then coming to Temple and being coached under Coach Chaney from Coach Ellaby.
And Lynard, I mean, when you were there, I mean, you sort of were in this era of Temple where, you know, your freshman year was Rick Brunson's senior year, and then by the time you leave, it's, you know, Mark Jackson's playing with you, and then Pepe Sanchez and those guys are there. When you're on those teams and playing with those guys, were you guys aware at the time of like just how good those Temple teams were, or is it something now you have to look back at, you know, 20 some years later and then appreciate?
Yeah, you gotta, when you're in the moment, you know, just like anything in life, you gotta sometimes reflect back and then you appreciate it more, you know, because, you know, I look back now like, oh, we should have been doing this or we should have did more of this. But when you're in that moment with them guys, it's just normal business every day, you know, what we're doing. You know, we knew what we were capable of, though. We knew how we could shut teams down. We knew how we can control certain aspects of the game. Which Coach Chaney was a master of that. You know, I always say he was analytical before analytics. You know, like everybody's looking at it, you keep it simple. You control the time of possession. You don't turn the ball over. You win a rebounding game. You create tough shots. You're going to win. You're going to be in every game if you do that. And so we never thought like, okay, man, we're good. You know, we're good. Even when we beat big teams, like, you know, we won. I think one year we went on a crazy we might have beat number 2 in the country and then number 3 like in the same week, and it was like it didn't hit us, you know. It was just like, yo, because, you know, for us it was like, yo, we're just as competitive and just as good as these teams that we're playing, you know. So when you got on the court with those guys, it was like, yo, you know, we're just as equal.
Lynard's really humble. I'll tell you this right now. He was there for a big transition, and he played in McGonigal Hall, and then you were there for the opening night of Liacouras Center. I was there. Yeah. I was up top as you guys played Fresno State, right? Yeah. Like you were there for part of it when it really kind of bloomed up.
You know, it's funny you say that, right? Like that was one of the recruiting tools too. I forgot to mention that. You bringing it up. That because actually I don't know if you know. I don't know the full inside story of the Liacouras Center, but it was supposed to be up 2 years prior, I think, to that. So when they came to me and recruited me, it was like, yo, you're going to be a big part of the new stadium, the new arena that you guys are going to play in. And Coach Chaney and them had, you know, the blueprints and all that. So when that moment came, you know, it's so amazing. I mean, you guys probably don't know the background story, but my dad helped build that building. It's an article in the paper about he was an iron worker, and he was working on that building while I was going to class and practicing next door. So having that moment for me was something special. And then I believe, I'm not Greek or nothing, but I believe in certain gods that, you know, basketball God, you know what I mean? I always say it, you know, and for some reason, you know, my dad helped build it, came and I scored the first 3 baskets. And I was like,
he's dunking the ball from the top, stealing the ball from the top, Josh, like you wouldn't believe.
Right. It was like, are they just going to pass the ball? It was just, I was sitting like anybody could have stole that pass almost. It was like, did they not see me standing here? So they made the pass, and, you know, I got a couple quick steals, but that was an amazing moment. I sometimes, you know, I don't really think about it as much, but yeah, that was a great moment there.
What was it like just walking out on that court the first time when it was sold out?
Brian remembers the thing was on fire at first. Like the Megatron, the Tron upstairs was on fire, literally. Not on fire for fans, but on fire. We thought we were going to have to cancel the game. It was funny because it probably was about what, 50% done, right? So like behind everything, they still was doing a lot of construction. And so obviously the thing that made us comfortable was that we was used to playing in big arenas though. You know, when we traveled to these other places, we would play in big arenas. Like I played in the Superdome, and that was the biggest place I played. So when you know, that transition from McGonigal to the Apollo was just like, okay, we just playing another, felt like, you know, we all our away games was in big places. So that's the feeling. But walking in there and having our own fans was something special, and something special to the city for to have an arena as such on Broad Street that you can come see, you know, some of the top teams playing. So that feeling was just surreal that first game for me.
And I think it speaks volumes of Coach Chaney's impact that the first game, Jerry Tarkanian comes and plays. Right? Like he
Yes.
brings his Fresno State team, and I'm going to go play at your place. You know.
Yeah, that's values because nobody, you know, not too many teams are going to do that. Come play Temple on the first name, opening night, knowing we're about to have one of the toughest defensive games in our so right. So the Tart, you know, we you know, you got to appreciate for him doing that because they was they ranked at that time?
Yeah, they were. I mean, they had pros. They had a lot of pros.
Rayford Austin, they had a couple forwards on there. I don't remember the exact names, but yeah. So for him to come in and honor Coach and say, "Yo, we'll come play you that first game there in that new arena," was something special.
So Brian, did you grow up a Temple fan, or were you just like a Big Five fan?
I grew up a Temple fan because of my siblings went to college, high school with Dan Leibovitz, who was the assistant coach at the time. He went to Episcopal Academy. So
Gotcha.
I grew up, and then I just love Temple basketball. My dad's a Nova guy. So he went to Nova, you know, he's great friends with Coach Mass, and we were, you know, everything like that. But I just became a Temple guy. I just loved everything about it. I went to McGonigal Hall early on. I saw Aaron's senior night at McGonigal Hall and kind of fell in love with some of those games and the atmosphere. You know, and I think that's where Coach would talk about being present. And, you know, what is awesome about, if you really look back on it, he never had to, he could have left, right? He could have left for bigger, shinier things. But instead he built it. He built it there, resurrected McGonigal Hall into being one of the toughest places to play, even though it was probably one of the worst facilities in the Atlantic 10. And then got there to build their own facility and turn that into a tough place to play in the country. So by not leaving and being present is humongous. Like so many people are worried about going to the next place or building their own brand. That Coach wasn't about that. You know, Coach never left his house in Mount Airy, and you know, right. I think it speaks volumes, right? It speaks volumes of the man he was. He cared more about the people he was with than what it meant. So
I'm sure both of you, by the time you played for him, you know, knew the impact that he had on the players, on the people, on the community around him. For either Brian, Lynard, whichever one of you wants to take it first, when was the moment where you understood it, where there was like a conversation you had with him and it was like, oh, okay, I get why he has the legacy, you know, that he has?
I'll let Lynard go first on that.
That's a good pass. You see that's shot ready.
You gotta know. You gotta know what players can make the shots. I'm more of a facilitator on this one.
You know how Coach used to say.
I'm still gonna make you answer it, Brian.
The right guys gotta have the ball at the right time. Great pass, Brian. You're right. You know what? You're right. You know what? That's a great question, though. I like, you know, that's what's gonna make this special. Great questions like as such. Obviously, I can be honest. It wasn't right away. You know, like when you first get there. I mean, you know of Coach Chaney. You know everything about him. You know everything about Temple and the tradition. But it wasn't right away. I always recall walking into the office and always seeing that poster or plaque or that saying, "Winning is the attitude." And you walk by like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, you know, I don't have a winning attitude, or what does a winning attitude mean? And then I think it was during one of Coach's great long speeches. I know Brian knows about him. And, you know, he started talking about basketball and relating it to life and how you carry yourself in the community when you're going to class, when you're outside, when you're present somewhere And if you're carrying yourself the right way and doing the right things and setting the right goals, I started understanding that, having the right attitude in life will, create winning things for you, not just in the basketball, but just, in life. So it was obviously one of those great speeches. It was so many, I cannot tell you which one it was. It was so many of them. So that's when it kind of hit me. So it probably was my second year. My first year, I was worrying about so much, being, how much I'm giving to the team, making sure I'm doing all the right things. And then once you're able to settle into your role, you started understanding and thinking. I always strive to be a thinker and a listener. And that's what Coach kind of also pushed too. You got to be able to listen. And so I probably was my second year in, I started listening more and understanding more and getting those concepts and realizing why he was so great.
Mine was a little later, Josh, I would say. I was about 25. I coached at the Phelps School. I get my own job. First time coach a head coaching job. I get everybody hats and gloves, right? Everyone's got to wear hats and gloves, no matter what. And first time a guy forgot his hats and gloves, I just sat him. You sit and watch. He didn't understand why. And I just remember Coach was about it. It was his way of, and I just passed right on to me. And it didn't even occur to me why I would do it. I just did it. And then I was like Coach Chaney would expect that. And I should expect that from my players to hold them accountable. So I would say it affected me personally, the lessons I learned as a 19-year-old, as a 25-year-old employed adult, that the impact that Coach had on just me, let alone the hundreds of players that he coached. And that impact moved on to a young man that he never even met. And hopefully that young man has the same impact from a Coach Chaney type of discipline aspect, just being accountable for having a hat. Lynard will know sometimes you'd have to wear it on the bus and you're going to play at South Carolina and you're like, it's like 68 degrees down there. I don't know if I need the hat glove, or, you're getting on, but that was the expectation. And that was,
just have it with you.
Yeah, you had to have it. I'll tell you right now, if you look in my jacket right now, I have a hat and gloves in the pocket.
Yes.
They're just in there. They're in. I don't know why. They're just programmed. I was programmed because you saw what happened. If the guys didn't bring it, they did not play. It didn't matter who you were.
Yes. Where is your hat? That's one of the things. You better not get no cold, and then the transition to everybody else. And now where is your hat and gloves that we got? I remember that saying. I remember, John, make sure these guys get their hat and coats. I don't care if they ain't sneakers, hat and coats. Make sure they got them.
I'm telling you, Josh, in my jacket right now, I have my hat and gloves. I'm 36.
I believe it.
I got that when I was 19. I still got it. Right? I still have that programmed in my head. John DeSantis,
my wife's gonna
go get him.
My wife's gonna see this and say, "See, I told you should always wear a hat and gloves," because I'm mad about that. Both of you guys are like I said, are now head coaches. You're both head coaches at your alma maters, which is really neat. Lynard, when you got the Simon Gratz job, how long did it take you to call Coach Chaney, and what was that conversation like? And did he give you any advice?
He did. He did. Don't go there and F it up. You already know, Brian, what he said. That was just a surreal moment in my life, just anyway, to be able to follow up behind, Coach Chaney and then Coach Ellerby. But, obviously I had to make that call. You got to sit down and, you got to make that phone call to Coach. And, he's so happy for you, as a person and coming through. And, one of the sayings that he always said was, you come in to learn, you lead to serve. So, that's one of the things he always implemented. And that's one of the things I always took. So when I was able to go back to Gratz, it was like, wow. And my first talk was with Coach Ellerby. And then I reached out to Coach Chaney. And he was like, "Oh, make sure you're doing the right things. You get right into basketball with you, teaching these kids, being impactful for them, being a role model. You got to be there for them youth, and don't let them turn the ball over. You'll be all right." That's And so, it's just surreal when you look at the recent pictures that I've seen recently of him standing next to the guys at Gratz. I got the school doing something special for him. So, sometimes I gotta look, I know Brian probably sometimes forget, okay, I'm at my alma mater. Like, this is amazing. Like, sometimes it is me like, yo, I really am coaching in the school that I played at and love basketball at and got so many things from. And so it just hits you. But following behind him, especially now at this point in time, is just like still surreal for me. Like I'm going to be in the books as a coach that coach at Simon Gratz behind these Hall of Fame people. You just can't imagine like I have this opportunity, and I always cherish it and always sit there and like, wow, I really need to. Just like we said, sometimes you're in that moment, you don't look and say that. Like, I find myself giving. I don't even have no Gratz gear. Like, I'm like, hold up, why I should need to be keeping some of this stuff. But in that sense, it's just surreal and it's so powerful to be at your old school, teaching the game of basketball and giving back to these youth.
Josh, I would tell Lynard it's probably worth 10 points. You don't even know it. Like coaching your alma mater is worth 10 points.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you have more passion for it. It means a little bit more to you. And I was lucky, Coach. Same thing. I went to my high school coach, Coach Doc first, and then talked to Coach Chaney and Coach Leavitt. You talked to Coach Dunphy. We talked to all your coaches, and they're all proud of you for accomplishing something because it means something. It means a little more. And I was lucky enough to have Coach L sit with me on the bench at Temple. He came an assistant. And Coach Lynard will know, like, put a hump on it when you're at the foul line. You still sometimes keep telling the guys, put a hump on it. God, come on, you got to get it over the rim. But having those, those are gigantic figures that coach in our area, coach high school basketball that grew up here in Philly, and it just means so much that it is worth. Yeah, you pinch yourself sometimes that I get to coach at Episcopal Academy someplace and I get to give back a little bit of what I got from such, and I get to be in the same sentence as, you coach Episcopal Academy like Coach Doherty, or, Lynard gets to be at Simon Gratz like Coach Chaney and Coach Ellerby. Like that's a big time group that you just try to live up to. When you get there, you're like, all right, I gotta bring it today. Not because, I've got to do it for the people that came before me, we got to keep this thing going. And it means a lot. But I really believe it's worth 10 points. At the end of the day, the guy who's coaching against me isn't as passionate about the brand that's on front of his jersey as I am.
Right.
He's not. Except for if I'm going against Lynard, then it's a real issue.
Tomorrow, February 8th, is John Chaney's viewing funeral at Temple University. I know a lot of programs in the area. We'll be holding those 5:30 a.m. practices. A lot of kids going to realize, like you guys talked about, it means a 4:30 wake up. Lynard, I know you guys aren't playing right now. Brian, are you guys going to have one of those practices?
We're going to do it virtually.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think just to give the young men an idea of the community that is Philadelphia area basketball. Right. It is definitely something that needs to be instilled, that there is more to our area of basketball. We have Hall of Famers. We got some of the greatest players ever come out of this area to play the game, but it's the community and the camaraderie that brings it. Like when you go into a gym and you see somebody that's from Philly, or, when I would coach AAU and we would go travel and you would see somebody and be like, they bring up the old Sunny Hill games, or Gustine Lake, or
wow.
What I mean? Like when you talk about it, there's so much more. Or the legendary John Harnett, right? Guys that not everybody know about, that are like impacted so many youths. Larry Wader, a positive image. There's so many. Claude Gross. I think Del Greco Wilson's done a great job of promoting some of what Philly basketball is all about. But there needs to be more things like this. To just show the kids that there's such a rich history of basketball in Philly and the area. And we should honor those that came before us, because it's unbelievable. Think about some of the greatest. We probably have two of the top 5 greatest players that ever played a game coming out of our area, with Wilt and Kobe Bryant, right? Let alone all the coaches we've got. You know, it is really special. So I'm glad Lynard has come up with a great idea, and it's going to promote something that's bigger than basketball, and help hopefully shine a light on what Coach Chaney impact he had on a lot of people. So yes, we will be partaking. Tough to get in the gym though nowadays. You know, the snow's not helping me either.
Yeah,
You know, I would love to have the kids wiping the sleep in their eyes at 5:30 on the baseline as we just start talking. But you know, it's going to be tough to pull off. But thank God, you know, this is one of the great things that this pandemic has brought. We're going to be able to do something that we never would have figured out how to do virtually.
Right. I think one of the things that you know it's year, you know, obviously this is the first part of it, the first aspect of it, but I think as it grows, you know, maybe next year we'll make sure things will be much different for everybody. Because I even start saying, well, guess what? If you can't do 5:30 a.m., do 5:30 p.m. You know, do something at 5:30 to represent right now, and then we'll make the push to make sure everybody's involved the right way. You know, the following year or the date that we try to choose, that will be a good date for it. But I just think it's only right. Like Coach Chaney was Philadelphia's coach, you know, so the whole city of Philadelphia should honor him in that way. I think sometimes we you know, if you don't really look or remember, these kids won't really look at the history as they should and remember things as they should. You know, Coach Chaney won 741 games. That's the fifth. I think we're still the fifth winningest program in collegiate basketball. And when you say that to a kid, they're like, really? Like Temple? You know? And so, you know, those things they need to remember. You know, you got to remember where you came from and how impactful he was. And then Brian named some names there. Clark Gross. Wow, that was a huge impact in my life. And then I grew up in John Harnett. When you say Gustine Lake, you know, I grew up the street from there. That's where I was raised at, up from Gustine, and going down to John Harnett's, who played a key role in Temple basketball, and with Coach Chaney. You know, we have one of the greatest history of basketball in Philadelphia. And, you know, we got to keep making sure we remind the kids and keep the history going.
Like Josh, we didn't do summer workouts. Like we didn't play 12 months a year like the kids are doing now. Right. Like when Lawrence talking about October 15th. So like we will all get together with John Harnett, who had just helping guys get better at basketball within the city, and we would play and we work out. And there was nothing to it. They would have guys from, I mean, I was in the gym with guys from Allen Ivory, you know, Nar will tell you there's guys that were, and then me, you know, like I'm not no impact at Temple in that realm, but they gave me an opportunity to work out and that we didn't have. We just didn't do it at Temple.
Yeah, the basketball community was so close knit back then. I know things change and rules change. Obviously, you can't do certain things now like you had before. You know, we was on college, you know, because of the gyms and that aspect of having a great gym to have. But like Brian said, you'll be in the gym with AI, somebody from the Knicks, somebody from the Clippers, the Kobe, Rasheed Wallace, you know, like you're in the gym with pros all the way down to high school kids. That's what John, and that's how we got better. You know, you going against a pro, like, and he's a pro, all-star pro. So and then you get, that's where you home find your skills up, and then you get your confidence, understanding, hold up, if I can guard this guy, if I can play with him or be on the court with this guy, then that lets me know where I stand at. And that's was one of the amazing things about that. And I mean, a lot of times we had a little advantage. John Harnett was down Temple. So in the back gym, you know what I mean? And everybody was there. And, you know, so that was amazing, how we were a family of basketball throughout the city. And everybody knew each other. Wasn't no issues. You know, you competed, you know, St. Joe's guys, LaSalle guys, Villanova guys.
And sorry to interrupt, Lynard, but Coach Chaney entrusted guys like that. He entrusted John Harnett, Fred Douglas. Like, you know, he would entrust them that, hey, you're going to work with our players. They know the game. They know the city. They know what it means. Like, he checked, you know, so many coaches have such big egos that they think they're the only way. You got to do it my way, right? Coach was like, hey, you're going to learn how to play from somebody else. You're gonna, all right. Skills are gonna get better individually. That's great. But when we come to the team, you're gonna know what's going on. But he entrusted people, with his work with his players.
Amazing.
There was one other thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up, and I appreciate you guys staying on a little longer than we planned. But obviously, a lot to talk about. We could be talking about this for days. Lynard, obviously one of Coach Chaney's, the impact he had wasn't just on basketball, but he was outspoken about political, social movements. He wasn't afraid to be more than a basketball coach. This COVID era has impacted Philadelphia communities certainly harder than it has hit some of the suburban communities. It's exacerbated some of the gaps that we've seen in racial education disparities, wealth disparities, all those sorts of things. You coach at one of the legendary schools in Philadelphia. Obviously there's gun violence is a big problem, and you guys unfortunately suffered a huge tragedy this offseason with Ross's horrible passing. What where is, when you think about his legacy in that social aspect and now the position you're in, where do you start to look at how you can help change things for the better and the impact you can have? And it's such a big question, but how do you feel like this city, this community can start helping the neighborhoods, the areas that really need the help?
Yeah, well, that's another great question. One of the things I learned from Coach Chaney is that, you're always going to hear some of the same things about being present. And so for me, it's easy. I'm obligated to do it, especially being the head coach at Simon Gratz. It's an obligation to be involved in the community and starting to implement programs that these youth can be involved in and creating programs for them to be involved in to help somewhat combat these issues that we've always have. Some of them are bigger than me, but the change is only going to come with them being involved, with them having a voice, with them being feeling a part of their communities. I think that's some of the biggest issues, that they don't feel a part of their communities because there is somewhere that they don't want to be. One of the biggest things you often do when you kind of somewhat make it, the first thing the majority of the kids that's from there say, I am leaving here. You know what I mean? I'm leaving this community because it's somewhere you don't want to be. So when you start feeling a part of your community, now you want to make a change. You want things to change. You want things to be better. So it's going to start with them. So as you speak, one of the things that my school, Mastery Simon Gratz, are 100% behind me with a couple of the programs that I'm putting together. One real fast is called the Backboard Program. And it's not, it has nothing to do with, it has everything. It doesn't have to do with basketball, but backboard as the reference of, making things easier. Just like in the game of basketball, use the backboard. You got a better chance of possibly making that shot. But, giving these kids something to lean on or something to use or something to get information from and resources from, for them starting to be a part of their communities. And so that's one thing that I'm doing. And anytime somebody says to me, Coach Stewart, we need you to be here. We need you to talk to these kids. We need you to do this. I'm obligated to do that. It's not like a question of it. It's not like I got to think about it. No, it's something that I have to do because, like you said, it's things are being magnified even more now in this pandemic of the disparity and things. But we got to start wanting to be in our communities to change them. It's like anything. Like if there's a raggedy rec center that's down there versus a nice one, your mind psychologically is different. You go into a raggedy one, you're going to throw that water bottle on the floor. You go into a nice one, oh, where the trash at? Just those little things, those psychological things that matter. And we got to start wanting to be in our community so we can start changing them. And we got to start doing better in that aspect.
I do want to give you guys the last word about Coach Chaney. As you said, tomorrow going to be a very sad day for the Temple community, for the Philadelphia basketball community. Brian, I'll start with you, and then Lynard, give you guys the last word.
Okay.
What will you be thinking about tomorrow? And, what will you be thinking about regarding John Chaney as you continue your basketball career?
Impact. We lost a man that made a crater of a hole. but his impacts will last far past anyone's lifetime. They'll keep going as long as we keep that message of everything about grit and winning attitude. So the impact that one man could have on so many young people and his own community. He didn't leave. He did not leave his community, and that's it. I mean, he impacted his community into changing it far past anyone's lifetime. So, impact would be mine.
Right. I think for me, one of the things that we all know, like Coach lived his life the way he wanted to live his life to the fullest, and that's one thing. So obviously you're gonna mourn those memories of him, and especially if he was able to share his world and be a part of his world. Those are the things that you're gonna really mourn. But one thing, he did live his life the way he wanted, and he went when he wanted to go. Believe me, that's one of the things I'm sure of, and I think Brian is sure that we know of. But serving the community, always remembering where we came from, the tradition, making sure you put Temple first. If you take that Temple challenge and you're a part of that, you put Temple first. Those are the things that I think really need to resonate with us, because I think that makes everything better. Like, we talk about community, it's a Temple community, and we need to come together and stay together. Remember, those are the things that he always instilled and talked about and wanted us to be about. It's like, stay together, make sure you're taking care of one another, make sure you're looking out for one another. Have you spoken to somebody from the school? And that's one of the things that was important to him, and it's important to me. And I think we need to make sure that's important to us, because that's what he stood for. He lived a great life. Like somebody asked me, and it made me sound crazy. He was like, "Oh, it's so sad. Was he sick?" I was like, "He was 89 years sick. He was, what I mean? Believe me, that coach was good. You know what I mean? He lived his life. He was good. He knows. You can only wish that your life will be remembered as such. Are you kidding me? Like Hall of Fame, people that he touched, all the people across the globe that are reaching out and saying the things that they're saying, you can only wish for something like that. Only wish. But impact, that impact that he has or had on everybody is something amazing that I'll be thinking about tomorrow.
Well, guys, I really appreciate you sitting down and discussing this with me. Have a safe rest of your weekend, rest of your season. Hope you guys watch Super Bowl and enjoy that a little bit.
Who you got, Brian?
Got to ride with Andy Reid. Got to ride with him. He still got Philly. He still drank Philly water, right? I got to go with him. He drank the water for Philly. We're in. I'm in with him.
That's the only thing. It's like, because I'm when you see something so great as in like, Tom Brady goes from one team to take a whole nother team, it's like, wow, you got to appreciate that greatness. But then you got Andy Reid over there.
I know.
I just want a good game. Eagles, I want a good game. I don't want to see no blowout where I'm like, oh man, I want a good game of football and I'll be happy. That's all I want. It don't matter. What you think, Josh? Who you got? Reid?
I mean, I would like Andy Reid. I have nothing against Tom Brady. He's the best quarterback of all time, and he's got plenty of Super Bowls. I would like the Chiefs. I like Patrick Mahomes. I like those guys. I don't know. I agree with you though. I really just want to see a good game. Like as long as it's an entertaining Super Bowl, then I'm fine. Just give me like one good commercial.
That's it. And then the next thing is like, if Andy didn't win it last year, I'd be like, oh no, 100%.
Right.
But because they won it last year, I'm like, it'd be kind of cool.
And Bruce Arians is a Temple guy.
Yes.
A lot of Temple
guy.
Very good point. We've got a lot going on here.
Yeah.
Look,
I will say, the Kansas City defensive coordinator lives on my parents' block. So.
Right. Oh wow.
Yeah, he's a Philly guy. They live in Philly when they're not in the season. So I don't know. So I'm like a little.
Right.
Oh man.
And real fast, Brian, while you on the line, that portrait.
Let me wrap up the interview, and then we're still recording. But I wanted to make
start recording.
But thanks, guys. I really appreciate you guys talking. Have a safe rest of your year. Stay healthy, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.